Okay, so if you are in here, I'm going to create a new project. Again, make sure that you have to create a not a Java project, it has to be a JavaFX project, right? So I'm going to create a new project called maybe something about chapter 14. You can do a right click, you can go up here and then create a new project, not a Java project. Okay, click on a project. And just make sure you have this JavaFX folder. If you don't see it, then you need to reinstall the JavaFX interface. So here, click on that JavaFX folder and make sure you have the JavaFX project here. Okay, and then just click Next, and you give it a project name. And I'm just going to call my project just chapter 14, maybe JavaFX. Okay, you call it whatever you want, and then just accept the default if your default setting is this. If it's not, just make sure you select the first button here and select the version 1.8. That is the Java 8. Okay, and so the rest could be just done. And we just click Finish. And you should have a project folder called chapter 14 JavaFX, or whatever folder you call it. Expand that folder, and you should see these 4 components in there. So you have to build. Just don't touch or don't delete these 3 files down here. Okay. And the src folder is where you will be having your application. So it already has this application package created by default. You can create your own application if you want to, but we'll go over look at the main example here first, and we'll create our own packages so you can know to do that. So in the application, you have a main.java. Okay, if you double click that, you should see that it looks like this. It's all built in, it's all created for you automatically, so you don't have to do it, but you need to know how to build this from the ground up. Okay, by yourself. But we'll walk over this, just see how it is, and then later on, after this, we'll build a new package, and then we'll add a new package, and we'll also add a new window in here. So in this example, it's given to us. It's a class called main. So the class called main is extending the application class. Okay, so we have to include or import this JavaFX.application.A application class library into the program. If you don't have this here like this, it won't work. Okay, it needs to extend this application class. So just make sure it extends the application class. Now, if you look at down here at the bottom, this is where we usually have our main method, right? The static void main. It's down there. And then there is nothing in there except a statement called launch and then args. This arg is just arguments here. It's passed that arguments to the launch method, and then this launch method is supposed to call and run the start method here. Okay, so if you use the word override here, this override, if you're overriding the method called start, which is a part of, which belongs to the application class. Okay. So if you see the word extends here, what does it tell you? Is this an interface, or is it a base class, or I mean an abstract class, or is it a concrete class? Well, in this case, you may not be able to tell, right? You might not. But if you see the word extends, okay, extends here means either this is a concrete class or an abstract class, right? If you see the word implements, then if this is implements, then this would be an interface. Okay, remember that from chapter 13. So those 2 keywords are different. So this is the base class. We know that. And if you see the override here, it gives you a clue. Okay, it gives you a clue that this method here belongs to the parent class of the application. It's okay. Okay, so you have to implement this start class method. If you don't do it, so if I do this, if I let's just comment this out, okay, you see that it's underlined on the main. It says you have to implement the inherited abstract method. So if you see the abstract method, so that means that this has to be an abstract class. Okay, so you have to implement that method. If you don't, let's say you don't have it, if you click here, it's going to add it automatically for you. If you click on that one, right, it adds it here. It's an empty one. Okay, so undo that. Again, this keyword tells you that. Of course, you don't have it. You don't have to use it, which is fine. It's optional, but it gives you that clue. All right, so in here we have a try catch. Just make sure that we're able to create this scene here and this stage and so on. So you put on try catch, but you don't have to. Okay? It's not required. You don't have to do that. We could take it all these out, and just keep these in here. It's fine. So eventually when we build ours, we're not going to use the try catch here. It's just a safety way to do it. But I'm going to remove this so we can see it better. Okay, it will look something like this when you build your application. So here we have a pane. It's called the border pane. It's one of those panes in the list we saw earlier. And just like you would instantiate any object of a class, you just put any name here. It's just object name. You don't have to call it root. Well, the Java will use a root, but you can call it anything you want. Just put a B pane or just pane is fine too. And you would instantiate object out of that. And then here we have a scene. Okay, so scene, in the scene name, you can call any name you want, just an object. Okay, call a main scene or whatever it is. The new scene, here you see that it has a object here, which is this pane here. And then we have a width and height. This is the size of your window. Okay, if you don't specify here, then it's gonna call. It's gonna use I don't know what the default size is, but I think it's a really tiny size window. Okay, so you can specify the size here. So if you put your mouse here in this scene, and if you press the Control key and press the space bar, okay, so you can see that there are a lot of constructors. Okay, there are about how many of them here? Well, about 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 different constructors. So the one here has 6. Okay, one has only one parameter, the root, which is this one here. One has a root in some kind of a paint fill. Paint fill means you give the background color. You can have a background color. If you don't, it'll be just this gray or white color default. And then this one here has a root. Root means is either a control, a button, or one of those panes. Okay. Then these two are the width and the height of that scene or that window. And then here you have so 3 or 4 different kinds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that means that you cannot have an empty scene. Okay. So in other words, you cannot have this. Okay. You have to have something added to a scene in this example. So you must have one of them there. I could just have the root and take this out like that is fine. So it will catch one of those constructors. So this part here just to add some CSS to our page. So here is the CSS here, application.css. And if you look at the CSS file, if you open it, it looks just like a regular style sheet. You don't have any style sheet here, but you could add style sheets in here. So if you want to add, some label, and then you could do like this. If you want to put a color for the font, then or for the text you put color, and then you could put like red. Oops. Like FF. Pound FF0000, right, like that. Except you have to prepend with the FX and then a keyword. Okay, so when you build CSS, add CSS to your page, you have to use this dash FX dash color dash FX dash background color, and so on. So this part here is exactly the same as your regular style sheet, except you prepend that with the dash FX. Kind of similar to how you do the WebKit and -O and and so for different browsers. Okay, so we're not going to do that now, but this is how you would do it. Okay, so it will look very similar to your regular style sheet, CSS3. Okay. Okay, so back in here, so below that we have the primary stage. This object here is passed to this function called start as a parameter called primary stage, and this is a stage object. Okay, so the stage, if you look in the import list up here, you have an import called JavaFX.stage.stage. So this is an object out of this class. Okay, so the scene is built from this class. The border pane built from this class. The application is from this class. Okay, so you can see that as you add more object to this this start method, you need to import those different kinds of libraries. So now, if you run this now, you'll see that probably there's nothing there. I click run, and so it's just blank because we don't have anything there, right? So we have the scene. This is the stage. Okay, this window here. There's no title. We didn't add one. We could add a title, so that you see something like Java 1 here, right? And then this white box here. Okay, is this default window size. Notice I don't have it here. I didn't add it, so I took it out. So is this window? It's resizable. Right now it's resizable. Okay, and you can set it so that it's not resizable. You can set it to false, so you prevent the user from resizing this window. And there's nothing added to the scene. Okay, so if you want to add a title to your stage, then if you look here, the stage is usually at the bottom here, right? The stage show is at the bottom here. Even though it's at the bottom, you can usually move this around. It will still be fine. I mean, like after you already show the stage down here, you could still add things to the stage or to the scene. It will still work. A little bit awkward there, but it should still be fine. But usually you want to put everything above here, above the stage here, right? So when you set the scene, you can add a title to the stage by going like type primary stage dot. Okay, if you type in the dot here, it will tell you all these different properties and methods you can add to the stage. Okay, you can add events, you can add a closed, you can add something. So if you remember your how we built classes and objects, and out of those methods, right, it's the dot notation. So there's always a getter and setter. So you want to set something, you can pretty much guess that, okay, there must be a set something. If you type in set, you see that you can set all of these. The full screen, you can make it full screen. Okay, you can make it. You can get this screen height. You can set the always on top. Means this window, this stage will always be on top of any other stage, any other window. Okay, you can set on, so you have resizable. If you make it resizable to be a false, then you'll see that it can no longer be resizable. So if I do that, expected Boolean value is a true or false. I put false in here, for example. And if you run this again, so if you run it now, you have this window, and if you try to resize it, you can't. Okay, so you lock it to that size. If that's something that you want to control, then you would do it that way. Okay, so you set so you cannot resize it. Okay, so that's the resizable. The title will be something very similar. If you notice, you can say set scene, set title, set width, set height, right? So it's set title. I can guess that is what it is, right? So set title. And again, if you're not sure, you can always use the IntelliSense. If you anyway you type in here, if it doesn't show up, you can always go back here and then type the dot again. Or if you type something and then you delete and you forgot, you click away, you come back and you forgot what that is. You want to reload the IntelliSense. Just anyone here, just again press the control space bar, and that should always come back on. Okay. and then you can say, oh, I want to set the title. So here it is, set title, and then expects a string value. So you can say here, my first JavaFX. Okay, and then save that, and you should be able to. Okay, so we just added the title to our stage or our window, right? And if you run it now, you will see that it's been added to the window here. Okay. And again, when you add these title to add some of these properties to these objects, sometimes the order is important, sometimes it is not. It doesn't really matter. So in other words, I can move this above here. I can even have this like wait after it's already shown. It should still be fine. Okay, it's kind of odd how that works, but again, it's not really a good way how to do it. But you could have it in that order. Or another shortcut, if you want to move these around, if you press on that sentence or that code, or you can select multiple of them, and let's say I want to move this up and down, and if you just press the Alt key and move the up and down arrow key, you can move that line up and down.
I didn't know that one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you can do that, and if you want to, duplicate, right? I'm not sure my computer works, but it's kind of weird. You can also, let's say, want to duplicate this line of code. You click on that or multiple lines, and you press the Control Alt and then down arrow. Mine doesn't work, okay, but my desktop works. Now I flipped it, but so Control Alt arrow, and that should duplicate the line for you. It's kind of funny how that happens. Oh, look at that. Okay, having too much fun. Okay. Okay. All right. There it is. Okay. All right. So we got the border pane, we got the scene, and then there's nothing added there yet, no component. So if you want to add something, let's say, commonly we want to add a button to this scene or this pane here. We are going to create a button. So we just type in the word button, the class button, and then you give it a button name. Usually you can follow the same convention that we use in Java, Java as well as in Visual Basic or in other languages, right? We use the BTN for button and then followed by what the button does. So if it's an OK button, they usually put BTN OK. If it's a cancel or if it's submit, then you would do something like that, right? So just to make it easy for you to quickly identify what that object is. So if you're using a label, you should still use the LBL and then the name of the label. If it's the first name or for a last name and so on. And same thing with text. So it will be like TXT, first name, and so use those. Use that convention to quickly help you also help other programmers to identify what the object does. So you want to instantiate an object or a button called button OK, and we'll just do the same thing like we would do with any other object. Right.
See you later.
All right. So new button. Okay. So again, if you see this red line, that means we have to import that button class. So put your mouse over here or over here, doesn't matter, until you see this little drop-down box and select the one that says button. Make sure you select the JavaFX and not the Java AWT. Okay. So you might have 2 or 3 different options, and we're dealing with JavaFX. So you have to select the one that says JavaFX scene control. And if you click that one there, it's going to add scene control dot button on the top for you. Okay, so now the underline squiggly line should go away, and we should have that button created. So again, if you click right in the button here and that parentheses, do a control key, control spacebar, you see that it lists all the constructors for you. So the options you have three different options. One is blank, it's no argument. and you can add a string. The string will display the name of the button, the text for the button. If it's okay, you can put the text okay there. You can also put the text as along with the graphic, so you can have a button that has a graphic background. So you have those three options. Okay, so for now, we can do it this way. If you do it this way, it'll be a blank button. Okay, so if you want to add something to it, you can go in here, say OK in here, type as a text, and that will say OK for your button. Usually that's a quicker way. And sometimes if you don't know, because you want to get that button name dynamically from a text file or from the user, then you want to use as a variable. You can do that as well. And if you use a variable later on, you can leave it blank, so that down here you read it from the user, and then after that you can say, okay, now please add the name of this button to OK, or to whatever that text is. You can do this as well. It takes 2 lines of code to do it, but you can see that button set text. Okay, very similar to in Visual Basic, right? Text, btn that text is equal to something. Here is called set text. Again, back to the setters and getters, right? So you can do it this way or the other way. It's fine. I'll leave this as is. But if you did use the text in here, then that should still be fine. Now you have a button now. After that, you have to add. Remember, you have to add the button to the scene. And this, you cannot add here. I cannot go into the scene and say btn OK here. Okay, I cannot add there, because this scene, if you look at the constructor, it only takes one object here. Again, press Control, you see that it takes only one parent root. The parent root is one of these objects, either the pane here or the button. You cannot have both. So how do you do this? Okay, so if I take, if you think about the pane, remember this pane is a container. Okay, a container can contain a lot of objects. So if you look at this border pane, it gives you a little a schematic of what that looks like. So what that means is that I can add this button to the pane, and then add a pane to the scene. Okay, so instead of that here, I would say, okay, before I add the root to that scene, I'm going to go and add to the root. And this is how you add items to your pane. Okay, you have to follow this syntax here. So the name of the object, whatever the pane is, if it's a border pane, stack pane, grid pane, doesn't matter. Want to add, you have to call this function called getChildren. Okay, getChildren, and this getChildren will this getChildren method is part of the pane class. And then from there you put another dot, and then you can do the add. Okay, you can add a single node. I mean, you can add another pane, or you can add another object, in this case a button. If you want to add only one, then you can use that, and then in here we add the button 1 OK. That's for adding one item. Okay, if you have, let's just say if you have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 buttons you want to add all together at one time, then you can do like, let's just say if I have 2 buttons, then I can go here, button 1, and add another one, button 2, 2, and so on. You can have a lot of lines of code, right? That's fine. But if that's the case, then usually you don't want to use this method. You just want to use the one that says add all. This is the one that says add all, and then here you just put a comma. Which one comes first? I want to add the button OK first. After that, maybe the btn cancel. Okay. So when you do this, you can add a lot of buttons, a lot of objects together in the single line of code here. Okay, so just put a comma separate by each of the objects here, and we'll do that in a minute. For now, I just want to add the button OK. And even though just one, it's still fine. So it's always good to use the add all, just in case later on you want to add some more to that page. So look at this. We have the stage created for us. I have a pane created. I have a button. I have the text for the button. Say OK. I add the button to the pane here. Add it to the pane, and then I create a scene called scene. You can call it scene 1 or main scene, doesn't matter. And then we add this pane to the scene. this style sheet, you can leave it here. You don't need it for now. You can just comment it out. It's fine too. It doesn't matter. And then once you have the scene, and then you need to add a scene to the stage by using the set scene, and they add the scene object to the stage. And then if you want to put title, you put it here. Otherwise, after that, then you need to show it. Okay? If you don't show it, it will not work. You won't see anything. So you have to show the stage. So that's pretty much the order of how you would write your application in JavaFX. And if you run now, you should see, well, okay, the border pane. Okay, the reason why you don't see it, I'll tell you why in a minute. But so again, this is still the border. I'm going to change the border pane to something else, okay? Because that one is a little bit confusing for now. So if you remember, if you mouse over, like if you click on the border pane here, leave it for like 2 seconds, you see that it looks like this, right? If you move it down, you see you can actually expand it. You can see what it looks like. So you have this pane has about 5 different areas where you can insert the object. You want to put on the top, on the left, center, middle, or right. Okay. So let's say you want to add it to the center, then you have to use one of these methods to do that. So instead of saying set add here, you want to say like root dot get children dot set center, or set left, set right, and so on. Okay. So we do that later. That was a little bit confusing. So I want to change this border pane here to a different one, something we can easily work with. So for now, let's just try the H box, which is a common one. So we can change that to H box. Okay, and the name here doesn't matter. We just call it root. It's fine. So H box is one of those panes, and this is the horizontal box. Okay, so you can again add the import the H box class inside the JavaFX. Okay. So once you import that class in here, click save, and then let's run it and see if we see the button. So here's the little button here. Okay, it's pretty tiny, but you can resize this because we didn't restrict that. So here's the button. It's clickable, right? Click on it. It should be clickable. There's nothing there because we didn't have any event there yet. So here's the button there. You can set the size of the button, the height and the width if you want to. Just go into the ptnok dot set width and so on, right? So if you want to set the width for this, I think you will use a function called set the preference width. Okay. Use that method and you put a value. Now these values are measured in pixels. Okay, the units in pixels. So let's say I want this button to be, I don't know, 50 pixels. It will be 100. Let's see how wide that is. You can also set the height if you want, but let's just say for the width to be 150 or 100. And if I run now, hopefully it should be a little bit bigger than before. So it's a little bit bigger. So 100 pixel again is on the top left. So from the 0, 0 position out to the right. Okay, this is the horizontal. And just to prove that it does stack objects to the right of that, let's add another button here. Okay. We could add another. So we just copy this. So copy what you have, and then just paste it down here. And we'll just call this maybe the cancel button. And then replace this with cancel. So once you add the cancel button, then we need to add it to the pane, right? The H box. If you don't add that, you're not going to see it. It is there, right? It's visible. We created it there and in the code stage, where it's not visible until we add it to the pane. So here on the add all, just put a comma here and put btn cancel. So we add a second object to that pane, and then we add the pane to the scene, right? So you can have a nested sets of objects inside another pane. So if you create a separate pane, you can put this H box inside that pane. So it becomes a child of that pane. So for now, if you click and run, you should see those two buttons stacked together side by side. So the from left to right. Okay. So you have the and then the first one is automatically, or the first is a default as a default focus. You can change the focus as well. Focus is the blue one. So as you can see, there's no space in between. So you can deal with the padding issues. So you have to set the padding or sometimes the gap in there. So you have the padding to deal with. You can change the background color, the height and width here. So the H box is going left to right. Okay. Let's go and then just modify one more thing before we take a break. Down here in the scene area. Okay. Earlier we had two parameters in here. I think it was like 400 by 400. Okay. It's the width and the height. We can do that. So it's a little bit bigger. So now if you run, you will see that the window is a little bit bigger and has those two things on the top, object there. Okay. And if you're curious what the VBox looks like, you can just go and change that. You can change the HBox to the VBox, and then just import that class. Okay, and that's all you need to do. And then if you run it, you'll see that now they're stacked from the top of the single column all the way down. Instead of the other way, they are now stacked from top to bottom. Okay, so that's another way you can decide whether how do you want to design your application. So later on when you think about your final project, which layout do you want to use. Okay. And again, you can have a H box inside a V box. Inside H box, you can have that way. It's get confusing, but you can nest other objects inside other objects as well. Okay, so let's take a break. We'll come back and then we'll continue on.